Hi, everyone. Welcome to Soulprint Intuitive Tarot. Thank you very, very much for being here. Okay, so a couple of things. First of all, this video should probably come with a thing that says warning rant ahead. But before I get to my rant, um, uh, there was a notification on YouTube from Linda G's daughter that she's having a bit of a health concern. Apparently, her white blood count is elevated. That's, of course, always a concern. I ask all of you who are inclined to please send her healing light, love, energy to her and her family. And I personally will be asking Archangel Raphael, the healing angel, to attend by her side so that she gets the very best medical care, and that which is in the highest good be done. All right. Secondly, this is what leads to the rant. So I'm reading, right? Because lately I do a lot of just like novel kind of reading, get my head out of the crazy that is our world. And um, the character in the book I was reading said, "But chaos is a ladder," and then he sort of paused and he said, "Of course, that didn't end very well for that guy." So I'm like, "Who is this person? I don't know this quote." So I looked it up, and I never got into the Game of Thrones. For those of you who did, apparently this is something that some character named Littlefinger said. Um, and the quote is, "Chaos isn't a pit, it is a ladder. Many who try to climb it will fail and never try to get up again. And the fall breaks them. And some are given a chance to climb and they refused. They cling to the realm or the gods of love, illusions. Only the ladder is real and the climb is all there is." This quote essentially means that chaos, rather than being a destructive force, can be an opportunity for advancements. Can you see where I'm going with this? Those who are willing to take risks and navigate the instability can rise to power, while those who cling to familiar structures or ideas may be left behind. In the show, Littlefinger uses this philosophy to manipulate events and further his own ambitions, demonstrating how chaos can be a tool for those who understand how to exploit it. Probably don't need to tell you who I'm thinking of when I read that. So here comes the rant. I appreciate that 45 is a change agent. But you know what? Like, so is Christ, so is Buddha. All right. A change agent does not need to, I've used this analogy before, talking about restructuring government. They say, when you clean out a closet, you take everything out of the closet and then you evaluate what works, what doesn't work, what you worn, what you haven't worn, whatever it is, and then you put it back sort of in a neat, organized fashion. That is a change agent. Somebody who opens a closet door, throws a bomb into it, and closes the door, lets the bomb explode, and then goes back in and says, "Okay, well, you guys pick up the pieces." That is not a change agent, in my opinion. I'm getting a little tired of this idea that, well, whatever he does is for the greater good. That's why he's here. Well, you know what? If that was true, if everybody was doing exactly what they were supposed to be doing in this lifetime, and none of it was ever of a lower vibration or frankly wrong, there wouldn't be anything called karma. Would there now? So the idea that he gets a pass on the hurt and the destruction and the pain and the humiliation and the terror that he is creating because it's changing things makes me insane. It doesn't have to be that way. Now, I will grant you that focusing on the negative and getting all whipped up about the things that are going on is not helpful, because listen, if you watch this channel for more than 5 times, you darn well know that what we are, what we think, what we feel is attracting more of the same. And when we sort of roll around in that lower vibrational energy, we're sending energy to the very thing that we're um, getting all riled up about, right? So if you can't be positive, at least be benign, right? At least try your level best to stay neutral, because it's only going to go from bad to worse as this continues to unfold. Not because he's accomplishing some greater good, but because he becomes more and more aggressive, because he's allowed to get away with it. And so let's take a look and see what we can anticipate. I mean, he had this thing in Russia, right? He walked in saying, Zelensky needs to be part of this. There needs to be a ceasefire. He walked out parroting Putin's rhetoric. Okay. So what is that? I actually read a comment from somebody on another that said something like, well, Russia didn't invade Ukraine for no reason. Oh, yes. Well, okay. Yeah, no, there was a reason. It was they wanted access to Crimea, ultimately the rest of Ukraine, because they wanted access to the water ports and the ocean, okay, the Baltic Sea. So, you know what? Let's take a look and see, because right now it honestly appears as if he is completely unrestrained. And worse, the Democrats they have a lower popularity rating than he does, and his is at like 35 or something. So let's just take a look at some of the energies as we move forward and what we can do to help shift them or change them, and what we can sort of be prepared for, so that we ourselves don't find ourselves going down that rabbit hole of panic and fear. Now, one final thing before I get to that reading. The other thing I want you to know is, you're going to be seeing this on Monday. On Tuesday, on my Soulprint Insights channel, and there is a link at the bottom of the description box below for that channel. That channel is really about, all things sort of psychic and spiritual. I'm going to be putting out a video looking at this whole divine feminine energy, what it is, why now, and what is supposed to be accomplished with it. I think I've gotten the download. The information is really interesting, really fascinating, but more importantly, I think particularly for women who are um, independent. Okay. So women who are not caught up in the drama of a relationship. And that does not exclude people in a relationship. It's just that women who are not in one, um, they just tend to have a little bit more time. And because of that, there is some really important work that they are here to do. So look forward to that. You need to go to the Insights channel, Soulprint Insights, as I said, link in the description box below. All right, let's take a look at this. Um, the higher they climb, the harder they fall. The problem is that something always seems to be cushioning his fall, whether it is legal or illegal, whether it is sycophants, whether it is people who have another agenda and are using him as a tool. I often catch the Ring of Fire. It's just like a little political commentary channel here on YouTube. And the guy there was talking about an article that came out in one of the Washington papers from the State Department. And it was talking about all the other reasons why tariffs are in place and why they're being pushed so hard. And it has to do with literally forcing other countries to comply with what the United States want, whether it is an extension on a contract or rights to get something, or force companies to invest more in America. Okay. But There's motivation. So not only do you have this Ludwig guy or whatever his name is, who I think in his heart of hearts really believes this crap, um, going on and on. Trump is perfectly prepared to parrot it. But the thing that, going back to the chaos's ladder, the thing that we all need to remember and realize is that the more crazy it gets, the more quietly things are being accomplished or they're being forgotten. I mean, what, a month, 6 weeks ago, everybody was up in arms about everything that Doge has destroyed. We're not talking about it anymore because we've gone on to even crazier stuff. And the damage and the destruction that was done, aside from, some of the actions that are being taken by the courts to sort of reinstate or say you can't do that, um, it's sort of gone by the wayside. And that's the danger of the chaos because we get distracted and meanwhile somebody is climbing that ladder, and the higher they climb, yeah, eventually they may fall, but the higher they climb, they are accomplishing the goals that were set out. And listen, 45 does not have the brain power. He may be a master manipulator, he may even be a relatively okay entertainer, I guess, but there is an agenda behind him. And those people have been working for decades and decades and decades to get into this position to literally enact the Republican agenda. Which is sort of ironic, right? Because when you think Republican, the first two things you think of is smaller government and lower taxes. And what you've got here is a huge government and crazy increased taxes for everybody but 1% of the people. So part of what I want to emphasize is that we need to stay benign. And I think also it's really time that if you haven't reached out to your Democrat leaders, reach out to them and tell them to get off their butts. You don't bring a knife to a gunfight. And they're not even using a knife. They're kind of like using like a butter knife, never mind like something with like an edge to it. That needs to be done. And by the way, while I'm just on this, if you live in Alberta and you have not yet signed the Forever Canada petition, find it and sign it. Okay. Let me calm down here and just see what messages are going on. Okay, so let's just hit the whole Russia, Putin, Alaska thing. Was anything accomplished there? Anything? Yeah, well, what was accomplished was that once again, Putin was able to completely manipulate 45 and get him to parrot what he wanted him to parrot. This is the thing about 45. He doesn't have any critical thinking abilities, right? So whatever you say to him, if that sounds sort of reasonable, or he's trying to appear intelligent, he just agrees and he'll repeat it. So you're dealing with somebody who is very sly, very smart, I'm sorry, and he's been in this game for a long, long time, and he is more and is ruthless, and I mean truly more ruthless than 45 because he doesn't care how many people of his country or any other country that he kills in this process of trying to create this sort of united Russia again where he can be the czar. All right. So that was what accomplished there. Nothing was accomplished in terms of trying to create a ceasefire or bring the war to an end. And apparently, Melania Trump sent a personal letter via her husband to Putin asking for his benevolence or some damn thing with all of the children of war. Apparently, he didn't even open the letter. And that's it. That's her big pushback. It's disgusting. It's appalling. Um, That isn't even bringing a knife to a gunfight. That's like bringing a wet noodle to a gunfight. All right, where is Trump taking this country? Okay, so one of the things that consistently remains true is that this whole experience has been a huge wake up call for people, not just in the United States, but everywhere, including here in Canada. Look what's going on with this whole separation of Alberta thing. Um, it's about paying attention to the very people who, in many ways, have huge impact on the quality of the life you live. That's the government. Whether it is the quality of education your kids are getting, whether it is the kind of healthcare you have, whether it is the amount of disability coverage or pension coverage, we need to pay more attention, because when it comes right down to it, it's those kitchen table issues that impact us the most. And if we're not paying attention to what they're doing, they're just doing it. You know, what's that expression? Forgiveness is much easier to ask for than permission. So this has been a global wake up call, because what 45 is doing is he is on display, showing the extreme that can happen. Because honestly, other countries like, China and even Russia and etc., they've been under a dictatorship, autocracy, whatever word you want to call it, for a really long time. And so in some ways they almost get um discounted. But the United States, the city on the shining hill, the, amazing experiment is crumbling. And it's a wake up call for everybody. It is especially a wake up call for people in the United States. And listen up, I know the guys who are watching this channel, I am preaching to the choir here. But the thing is, it's about how much more can you do? Can you start phoning people? Can you get involved? Whatever it is. And I did the video that was released last Wednesday called Calling All Light Workers, had some really helpful, I think, suggestions, because if you're here and you're concerned about this stuff, you're probably a light worker. So if you haven't checked that out, you might want to. It had a considerably lower number of views, and that's not surprising, but if you haven't, maybe check it out. All right, where's this taking us? Okay, so the puppet is um starting to experience, or is continuing, I think, to experience significant mental and physical health concerns. And even though his vice president, who by the way got booed in the UK, like, way to go, UK, because he's there on this apparent family vacation, but apparently people out there let him know that they didn't like him very much, and they actually didn't want him in their country. So even though he is not respected or liked, the plan will be to put him into place to succeed. Because again, they don't care what people think or feel or how they're hurt or how families are destroyed. All they care about is enacting this Republican agenda. And we've spoken about this. The bottom line of the Republican agenda is let's make the wealthy really, really wealthy. Let's completely shrink the middle class, because how did they all of a sudden get all this power? And, get the middle class down into the lower class so that basically, the wealthy are living beyond anybody's wildest dreams, and everybody else is like scrounging around for crumbs. That is their idea. That is their utopia. So don't make the mistake of thinking if you get rid of one, the other one goes. As of right now, the plan is for that other one to step in. And while he may not trigger um, the same outrage, the agenda will continue to unfold. So, this is where everyone needs to stand in their own power and do what they can do. And listen, I understand, trust me, financial stress. I understand worrying about health and health care. Because even here in Canada, although we have healthcare lately, particularly here in Alberta with, Trump on Hale Smith, she's like completely destroying the healthcare. And so you're waiting forever and ever and ever to get really basic things done. So I get that. I understand that. I live with chronic pain. Trust me, I get it. Um, he got back in because there were definitely some shenanigans, but there was also, I think, a momentum that, even though it was a really powerful momentum on the Democratic side, the Republicans were almost sort of like a sleeping giant, and we were not necessarily paying attention to the fact that his diehard supporters were still there. I think where one of the mistakes that was made was that we assumed that the independents, or the Republicans who were really disappointed, who figured out they had been played for a fool, that they were going to swing to Democratic, and they didn't. They stayed home, or they, did whatever they did, wrecked their ballot, I don't know. But the strength that was supposed to coalesce around Harris didn't happen to the degree that it needed to. And yes, there was other stuff going on. And yes, they were hell bent and determined to get him back into office, and they succeeded. There is a midterm election coming up, and this is now the time to start pushing forward. Preparations are starting. Well, they've probably already started. And again, particularly with the Democrats, they have the perfect opportunity to completely neutralize 45 or Vance, should he be in the office. They can't do it if they continue this wishy washy. All right. People want them to fight. Yes. Tabletop concerns are important, but they are showing themselves to be weak and unproductive, and people don't like that. So the energy literally for the next 12 or 14 months is to really, really get some momentum going. This needs to once again be, that blue wave, that tsunami, and it needs to be bigger than the last one, because the Republicans have to be neutralized. Okay. So anticipate continued distraction, and look at the light, look at the shiny bouncing ball. Isn't it gorgeous? Um, and focus on what they're doing, and more importantly, focus on what you can do. And everybody can do something. If the energy builds and is strong enough, it will um, increase energy and momentum, and you can see that blue wave once again forming and then neutralizing the Oval Office. But there's work to be done. It's also important, I think, that we try to make sure that we don't only pay attention to things that support our bias, because I think that there's information out there that is, it would be helpful for us not to overlook, all right? Um, I think that, Gavin Newsom, he's pushing back the way people want all Democrats to push back. But everybody slants things to their best advantage. That's politics. So it's important that you don't only pay attention to what we're hearing sort of in our bubble, but what else is going on out there? Okay, so he's militarized the police in DC, and they're saying, well, crime is down 30%. Well, okay, but how much crime still exists? Um, they're throwing out all the undocumented immigrants. Okay, but how many of those um, believed that they were legitimately here? There needs to be a balance. Not everybody that got deported shouldn't have been. Maybe the vast majority of them shouldn't have been, but some should have been. And I think that we need to try very hard to keep those scales balanced, because as I said, in the next year, and I mean astrologically, energetically, psychically, this change is coming. And the question is, do we take the stuff out of the closet and evaluate, or do we throw in a bomb and close the door? We can't get to the fourth and fifth dimension with the way the energy is. But it's foolish to think that those dinosaurs who are running things are going to just sit back and go, oh, okay, I'm not popular and people don't like me. I guess I'll change my ways. They're backed into a corner. They fight, and they're fighting for their lives. I mean, we've had old politicians say they're not going to retire because, well, what would I do with with the rest of my life? I don't know. Go enjoy your family. That's what all of your cohorts say. Okay, obviously I haven't calmed down enough. But it is concerning because there's so much crazy going on. It's so easy to get sort of sucked into it. Let the outrage be productive. And if there isn't a way to do that, then neutralize it and benign, right? So there's sort of almost like no energy going in either direction, because that is far more helpful than um, sending it off into those lower vibrations. Because we all know who's living in those lower vibrations, and we're feeding it if we're not careful. It's also important to be aware that this is simply a period of time, almost like in the evolution of the planet, that there is the potential for great change and powerful change. But this will always be a planet of opposites and a balance. You can't obliterate one, but right now the balance is sort of wonky, and the lower vibrations have the upper hand right now, whether we like it or believe it's fair. So the next 14 months or so, 16 months, it's going to be really, really important that we focus on what we want. We pay attention to what is, and we don't get distracted by all of the pretty bouncing balls that create outrage. There are so many bright lights in the world. But right now, specifically in the United States, there's a lot of people who are sort of waking up to their own spirituality, their own path forward, and going, you know what? This isn't right what's going on. Hang on to those bright lights and join them. And by and large, know that you're one of them. And you have a job to do. And that is to spread the light and spread the positive. And you're not spreading the positive if you're outraged. And I now have to go put my feet in the grass and do some deep breathing because I'm doing exactly what I said nobody else should do. All right. Anybody looking for a private reading? I do have some openings next week, so the 25th, 26th. And as I said, look for the video on Soulprint Insights channel that's going to be released on Tuesday. We will see you Wednesday. Do not forget to put your questions and comments in the section below. And one of the amazing or brilliant women who has helped me will be on it this week. All right. Until I see you next time, take care and be well. Bye for now.